Dear colleagues, thank you very much for coming. My name is Oleg Kirichuk. I'm coordinating media relations at Ukraine's Pavilion. And the agenda of today's press conference will be the following. The minister will give a short presentation on latest updated figures of environmental damage caused by the war in Ukraine. And then we will have questions and answer session, and you will be able to ask your questions into microphone. So without further ado, I would like to give a floor to Minister of Environmental Protection and Natural Resources of Ukraine, Mr. Ruslan Strelets.
Thank you, Oleg. Thank you, dear colleagues. First of all, I want to thank you that you came here to our pavilion. I want to say that this is the first year when Ukraine have their own pavilion. This pavilion is possible thankfully to our friends, to the countries who support Ukraine now, support in this hard time. It's very symbolical because this pavilion is the place of unity of all friends of Ukraine. This pavilion is a place of unity of all civilized world and unity in the war with Russian aggression, war for democratic, war for peace, and war for green and climate neutrality future of all the earth. So thank you. All of you is the soldiers who help Ukraine to win in this war, because you send the right messages and you say true to all civilized countries, to all people who understand that this war need to be finished in short period of time and finished with the victory of Ukraine. Thank you. So Monday, October 10, 83 rockets flew over our homes. Imagine it. Ukraine experienced the 5-year Syrian war in one day. Monday, October 17. Dozens of kamikaze drones flew in the Ukraine sky. A number of human deaths and injury cases again. Again explosions. Again fires. Again emissions of green gases and toxic substance into the atmosphere. Monday, October 31. While we were cooking morning coffee on gas burners in the shelters, our air defense forces shot down almost 50 rockets. After that, we got out of the bomb shelters into the out of powered cities and went on with our lives. Today is also Monday. Air alarm in our cities don't end up. We pass through the news every morning, wait for the air raid warning to go off and go to work, to schools, take our children to kindergarten. In addition to Monday, we have Tuesdays. It is not only Kyiv, but also Mykolaiv. There are Wednesday, Tuesdays, Fridays. There is Zaporizhia, Kharkiv, Dnipro cities. There are Saturdays and Sundays. There are Mariupol and Kherson. The war is going on every day. War does on in every corner of large country in the heart of Europe. Russia is doing everything to shorten our and your horizons of planning up to days, hours, and minutes, so that we cannot work, study, rest, or live. After all, a country with such a way of life has no future. However, we look decades ahead and continue to care about our tomorrow. Because of the war unleashed by Russia, We will have to do even more to overcome the climate crisis together with the civilized world. We have already done too much for the victory to abandon our plans for the future. Ukraine accepted new challenges. Russia is taking lives not only from us, Ukrainians. We monitor the state of the environment and count every environmental crimes of the terrorist state. We do it every day. In 2022, we registered more than 2,000 environmental crimes. Nature is priceless, but we have learned to calculate environmental damage on a scale of world has never seen before. Today, the amount of damage is at least 37 billion euros. In particular, the damage of fertile Ukraine soils amount to more than 11 billion euros. And this is not our local problem, but a threat to Ukraine fulfillment of its obligation to maintain food stability through the world. And while the whole world today is discussing a reduction of greenhouse gas emission, we in Ukraine are forced to once again discuss the fight against pollution. Emission on the territory of Ukraine in 2022 exceed the amount of emission in 2021 by 23 times. At the same time, our industry can only work at 25–30% of its potential. The direct damage to the climate as a result of Russian aggression is at least 33 million tons of CO2 emitted into the atmosphere. Potential emission during infrastructure restoration may reach 49 million tons of CO2. Ukraine has become the most mined country in the world. According to the least data, almost a third of the territory of Ukraine mined. Demining could take at least 7 years and maybe more. To date, more than 270,000 mines and more than 2,000 bombs have been defused. Almost 450,000 hectares of forest are occupied or are in the war zone. Most of the fighting takes place in the forest. 63 Ukrainian forestry and 15 forest enterprises are occupied now. Our army forces have already liberated almost 3 million hectares of forests and 27 enterprises of the forest industry. The Russians have turned our natural resources into the military base. We will have to restore them for years and decades. Today, 20% of our protected areas are under the threat, including 3 million hectares of the territory of Emerald Network. 16 sites of the Ramsar's network are at risk. 10 national parks are under the occupation. 8 natural reserves, 2 biosphere reservations. Even if Russia pays for that, it has done, who could return destroyed species of flora and fauna to the planet? Russia has already null-field action that you and we have been doing to mitigate the climate crisis during decades. Russia is trying to undermine efforts we are agreed on here and now. Russia can negate efforts that will follow based on the results of the climate summit. Ukraine is doing everything to hinder Russia. Today, our state initiates a global platform for the assessment of environmental damage from military action. Russia must be held responsible for only to Ukraine, but also to the whole world. To every human being and not only human. Russia takes away the right to life from all living creators. We call upon each and everyone to join the struggle of the life for human civilization. Not only Ukraine, but the whole world should demand responsibility from Russia. Thank you for your attention. I showed you figures. You understand that it's a war which destroyed not only nature. This war destroyed not only health and lives. This war destroys future, green future of our kids, of our civilization. And I'm sure that everybody will help us in this war and we will win. So I'm ready for your questions. Thank you.
Yes, please, one by one. We have enough time. So, yeah, thank you. Okay, so Georgina, it's BBC News.
Yeah.
I will translate.
Okay. So Georgina Ranov, BBC News. You mentioned 2,000 environmental crimes in 2022. What is an environmental crime? How do you measure that?
Як визначається поняття екологічного злочину, як ми їх вимірюємо?
Before February 24, we even can think that we will need some methods and methodologies to calculate environmental damage. I don't know country who even think about methodologies of calculating environmental damage before February 24. Now we not only recording the environmental damages, we developed new methodologies. We have 7 new methodologies which help us to calculate and to understand how much money costs 1 or 2 or 1,000 cases of damages of environmental. We made the procedure of justice of these methodics. Today, this methodics is legal on the territory of Ukraine. But I said about our initiative, which we come to COP27. One of this initiative is to begin the communication about international platform to develop international methodics for calculating environmental damages. Yes, to make this methodic international, because in Ukraine we still don't have the legislation about ecosystem services, but we work hardly to implement the ecosystem services principle to our legislation, because we understand if we count the damage for environmental with this principle of ecosystem, so the price of these crimes will be much higher. So because that we need to support and we need to organize this platform. I don't know how it be. It is a question for discussion, but I'm sure that all world need this platform, because if we will have international methodics, another country who will even think about new war, it will take the calculator and it will calculate how this war will cost for them. And I'm sure that this is one of the ways and one of the steps to make the world safer, and to make everything that we will not even hear and even something know about possibility of new wars on the earth.
Okay.
Hello, Katie Collins from CNET. Thank you, Minister, for giving us this time. I've really enjoyed looking around the Ukrainian pavilion over the last couple of days and seeing some of the vision for the green recovery of Ukraine. And I was wondering if you could tell us a bit more about what your vision of a Ukraine of the future, once you've been through the green recovery, would look like.
It's a very important question because we have a lot of discussions about plan of recovery of Ukraine. Some our colleagues say about green recovery, but not a lot of colleagues understand what we have now in Ukraine and what we had before the war. Before the war, we had a plan of implementation, our obligation, first of all, with European Union. This obligation had some plans. And if we implement these steps of these plans, we tried to implement European directive and integrate new technologies to our economy to make our economy more green and more sustainable and other. Now Russia destroyed our possibility to implement our obligations. But we understand that now we have a unique time for quickly implementation of these rules and frameworks, which Europe has more years ago. And I think in last 6 months, we adopted with our parliament a lot of new environmental initiatives. And we adopted with the cooperation with our parliamentaries and the Committee with Environmental of Verkhovna Rada of Ukraine, we adopted a lot of new legislation. For example, this is a new law about waste management. This law is about 98th European Directive. It's about opening borders for investors who come to Ukraine and build the new waste management facilities in Ukraine. And this law about European rules and frameworks of organization of waste management. And before the war, it was a problem to adopt this law because it was some lobbies, some discussions and others. Now, when all people, all parliamentaries, all ministers work together to make our country better, majority of our parliamentaries voted this draft law, and we have this law now. It will work on July next year. This is only one case of what unique time we have now. We adopted, or not we, Verkhovna Rada, our parliament adopted the draft law about PRTR. It's about register of emission. It's European Directive 2. We're preparing to communicate and to implement the draft law about industrial pollution. It's 75th European Directive. We have a unique time to make the reforms quickly. Why I say it for you? Because you asked me a question, how will be green recovery? Green recovery will be with the new European rules after implementation European directive, like a frameworks of new enterprises, of new facilities, of new companies, new business. And this is the first answer for your question. And the second answer, this pavilion shows, on the one hand, the results of the war for environment, and on the other hand is our green future and renewable energy, new technologies, hydrogen, wind, solar, and others. So this unique time, because you know, all our all cases of the life of all people is a balance. So if we have a hard situation with the war, we have better situation with the adaptation of legislation and to go in and moving faster to develop our country, to recover our country. But I'm sure that bigger possibility to do it to be after the war. But now we need to prepare for this.
David Keaton from the Associated Press. Very briefly, sir, have you yet managed to assess the carbon emissions surplus brought on by the war, which I understand is a very hard task? And do you see any pathway forward which would enable you to force the international community to consider the emissions that were created by this war to be accumulated on Russia's emission, to be counted towards Russia's emission, not the ones that took place in Ukraine?
Значить, питання від журналіста. I will translate into Ukrainian because we have live stream to Ukraine. So the question is, питання про те, чи оцінює Україна кількість викидів парникових газів під час війни, і чи думає про те, щоб потім ці викиди були враховані за Росію, як винуватця цих викидів?
First of all, to answer to this question, we need to understand how to not only calculate, but how to and how to report. It's a very discussive question, and I'm sure that to answer to this and to have the construction, we need to have some, once again, platform to discuss this with countries who part of Paris Agreement and others. It's very important to understand how to do it rightly. And I'm sure that in nearest future, we will finish this challenge and we will understand how to do it first. And what about the calculating of the emissions? I showed on one of the pictures, showed the figures, and we calculate this emissions from aggression. But I'm sure that only unity of the countries and making and developing rules for this issue is the first step which we need to do. And I invite of all countries to start the discussion on this issue.
Minister, thank you. Rafiq Lasser from Energy Intelligence. Thank you, Rafiq Lasser from Energy Intelligence. So we're hearing a lot about how the EU will help rebuild and Ukraine and help you transition in your green transition. And I see out there that there's plans for maybe export of 15 gigawatts of clean energy to the EU. An investment for them. Could you give me any idea about how discussions are going in that respect? What your plans are, even if they're just initial plans and ambitions as regards becoming a green power and exporting it back to the EU?
This topic is not only the topic of Ministry of Environmental Protection of Ukraine, because we have the Ministry of Energy, and this cooperations and communication is a communication of my colleague Herman Galushenko, Minister of Energy. It's very difficult now to say the fresh information for you, the results of discussion, but I just want to say you that all our obligations, all our programs, our ideas, our cases, which we try to develop and try to communicate with, for example, with the European Commissioner in Environmental, Virginijus Sinkevičius. This is a framework for for existence only only units who environmental friendly units in Ukraine.
Hi, Minister. Many thanks for this. My name is Louis Wilson from Global Witness. I have two quick questions. The first is, given that Russia is funding its war with the sale of fossil fuels, do you have a message for leaders at COP27 on fossil fuels? And secondly, second part, we revealed that there are 636 fossil fuel lobbyists here. And I wonder if you have any comment on the presence of fossil fuel lobbyists at COP27.
Це перше питання. Росія фінансує війну проти України грошами, які отримані за викупне паливо, за нафту і газ. Чи яке ваш меседж до інших лідерів на КОП-27 щодо цього? І друге, на КОП-27 понад 600 лобістів нафтогазових компаній. Що ви думаєте з цього приводу? Лобістів нафтогазових компаній, які тут на КОП-27 намагаються просувати свою адженду. Яка ваша позиція щодо того, що тут 600 лобістів?
Я відповім, можна на українській мові?
Okay, I will answer in Ukrainian and I will translate.
В першу чергу я можу сказати, що те, що тут присутні лобісти на КОПі, вони точно присутні.
So first of all, yes, it's truth that lobbyists are present at COP27. There is no doubt about that.
Мені сказали, що тут на теренах КОПа дуже багато представників Росії.
And I've been told that a lot of Russians actually are here.
Але я їх особисто не бачив жодного.
But personally, I haven't seen any Russian here at COP.
Про що це каже? Про те, що ті країни, які є країнами цивілізованого світу, а їх значна більшість і голосування під час декларації Генеральної асамблеї ООН це показало.
And it is an evidence that the majority, that all civilized countries of the world and the voting by the General Assembly of the UN on 12th of October condemning illegal annexation of Ukrainian regions by Russia is evidence of.
Тому я впевнений, що їх потуги відпрацьовувати свою адженду і свої цілі, вони точно не увінчаються успіхом, тому що цивілізований світ не вірить пропаганді, і цивілізований світ сьогодні, я бачу і дякую за це, стоїть поряд з Україною.
So this is an evidence of that the Russian efforts to lobby their interests here at COP will fail because all civilized countries, the majority of them, ignore these Russian fakes and Russian propaganda and support Ukraine.
Тому я впевнений в тому, що ми повинні просто рухатись вперед до нашої перемоги, рухатися обраним курсом, рухатися разом і вірити в зелене майбутнє всього світу.
So that's why I strongly believe that together with all other countries, with all our international supporters, we need to move forward. We need to move forward to the green future of the whole world and to Ukraine's victory in the war.
Hello, Ursula Hizzi with Agence France Presse. Could you elaborate more on the uniqueness of your methods and on how you're planning to share them with the world and what effect it would have?
Ви абсолютно праві, що основна мета будь-якої методики – це щось зафіксувати для того, щоб в даному випадку скомпенсувати збитки.
So the main aim of the methodologies we have developed is to record environmental crimes and in the future to get compensation from the aggressor state for the damage it has done.
Але методики – це тільки маленький елемент всієї процедури стягування репарацій з агресора.
But this methodologies is only a small part or in the process of getting compensated for environmental damage.
Якщо казати про методики, то вони сьогодні основані на реальних викликах і наукове обґрунтування, скільки це коштує.
So these methodologies are based on our real life experience of war in Ukraine, and they are based on scientific researches on the monetary value of environmental damage.
Але далі буде ще великий челендж – це захистити кожен кейс фіксації екологічних злочинів задля того, щоб вони були визнані міжнародними судами.
But the main challenge, and we understand that it will be very difficult for us to file lawsuits for each individual case of environmental crime, and to make it that the evidence we file will stand in the court, in the international court.
І тут Міністерство довкілля України, воно не єдине в цій роботі, тому що в нас ще є Міністерство юстиції, Міністерство реінтеграції і інші міністерства, у яких у кожного є своя задача у цій нелегкій, у цьому нелегкому виклику.
And the Ministry of Environmental Protection of Ukraine is not the only player in this procedure. So we work together with our Ministry of Justice, and we work together with our Ministry of Reintegration of Temporarily Occupied Territories, so that our unified efforts lead to success in getting compensations.
Я впевнений в тому, що важливу роль у цьому процесі буде відігравати Офіс Генерального прокурора України, у якого теж є ті скіли, яких немає у міністерстві.
And I'm also strongly, I'm sure that the General Prosecutor's Office of Ukraine will also play a crucial role in this process, because they have the skills necessary to prove these crimes.
Я сьогодні вже багато разів згадував слово «єднання». То дані методики, дані процедури, про які ми з вами говоримо, це теж про єднання. І тільки єднання дасть дійсно дієвий результат в найкоротший термін період часу.
And in my today's speeches here at the COP, I have often used the word unity. And only in unity of all our efforts, internal in the country and international, we will succeed in recording and getting compensation for environmental crimes.
Okay, thank you. Gloria Dickey with Reuters. Two quick questions. The first is, have you been able to get into Kherson to assess the environmental damage there yet? And if not, what do you expect that you might find? Did you get that part? Have you been able to get into the retaken city of Kherson yet and assess the damage there, environmental damage? And secondly, if you might give a reaction to the rekindled relationship between the US and China today, and what that could mean for the outcome here at COP27.
Як ви оцінюєте зближення між США і Китаєм сьогодні на саміті
G20? Херсон кілька днів як звільнений.
So it's been only a few days since Kherson has been liberated by Ukrainian armed forces.
Ви бачите у відкритих джерелах, що по Київській області, так як і по багатьох інших областях, які теж звільнені, по Харківщині, там ще дуже багато роботи задля того, щоб перебування експертів було безпечним.
And you can see from open source information and open source articles that there is a lot to be done in the liberated regions like Kherson, the Kherson regions and the Kharkiv regions to make these regions safe for the work of our experts.
Одна справа приїхати в Херсон, в місто, на площу або на вулицю, а інша справа піти в ліс і порахувати конкретні збитки. Ми не знаємо, чим це може загрожувати тому чи іншому експерту.
So it's one thing to just get to Kherson to its central square. It's relatively safe, but quite another thing for our experts to go into forest in the Kherson regions. It's actually very dangerous to be there at the moment.
Тому я впевнений, що найближчим часом ця робота буде організована в безпечний спосіб, точно так же, як ця робота була організована по частині деокупованої Харківської області, куди ми з командою виїжджали і організовували відповідну роботу.
So I'm sure that this process will be organized in the shortest possible period of time, and we will do the same as we did in the liberated Kharkiv region, where the minister himself and his team visited some cities liberated from the Russian occupation to assess environmental damage. Про США і Китай. Будемо коментувати? Про збільшення США і Китаю. So about US and China, it's not the sphere of responsibility of environmental minister to comment. It's our Ministry of Foreign Affairs. We can get you in touch with them. Okay, Nate.
Hey, Nate Rao with NPR. Your colleague, the energy minister, has said that there might need to be an increased reliance on coal and natural gas in the short term to try to deal with the energy shortfalls in Ukraine this winter. Is that a concern to you at all? That there might be it might move the other direction, that you might have. Yeah, so your colleague, the energy minister, has said that there might need to be an increased reliance on coal and natural gas over the coming winter to help deal with the energy shortfalls in Ukraine. Is that something you're concerned about in terms of the climate pledges that Ukraine has made?
Спілкувався з міністром енергетики, той сказав, що саме цієї зими, можливо, буде більше фокусу на використання газу і вугілля, щоб пережити зиму. Чи вас це хвилює з точки зору довкілля?
А як хвилює?
Disturb, worry.
This issue is disturbed me very much because not only gas and not only coal. We have a challenge of getting the forest wood for people, because we understand that this winter could be the hardest winter in history of Ukraine. But I'm sure that all decisions which we will implement will be
Okay, so we are sure that all decisions made by government before the upcoming winter will be made with the thought of minimizing the environmental damage.
Yes. Я хочу сказати, що ми сьогодні навіть в складних умовах приймаємо ті рішення, які не спрощують нам деякі речі з точки зору. Тобто ми зберігаємо фокус на збереження навколишнього середовища.
So I want to emphasize that even during the war time in Ukraine, we at the government, we are not going for easy decisions. We do some things that actually complicate our life as the government.
Один з прикладів – це намагання умовного тиску щодо скасування процедури оцінки впливу на довкілля під час війни.
So one of the examples is that there were some attempts to pressure the government to cancel the environmental assessment in Ukraine.
Але уряд прийняв виважене рішення, процедура залишилась, але ми сьогодні тримаємо фокус на тому, щоб вона проходила значно швидше і допомагала нам будь-які процедури у відповідності до тих стандартів, які були і до війни.
But the government has made a justified decision to leave this environmental assessment procedure, but to make it as fast as possible.
Тому будь-які рішення, які будуть прийняті, вони будуть прийняті точно в рамках нашого законодавства, і наше законодавство буде продовжувати курс на сталий розвиток і на захист навколишнього середовища.
So any decisions that will be made by Ukrainian government in preparation to the upcoming winter will be based on current Ukrainian legislation and will include care about the environment.
Okay, my name is Islam from Japanese Akahata newspaper. We would like to ask him about, he already mentioned about his keening on the green future of Ukraine, okay? And we know that, for example, Japan has witnessed many nuclear disasters which caused many victims, okay? Are Ukraine planning to decrease the nuclear power plant as a source of energy in its future or green future?
Представляє японську газету, тут він фіксер для них, і він запитує, що Японія пережила атомні катастрофи, і Україна пережила атомні катастрофи, чи ми плануємо залежність від ядерної енергії в майбутньому після воєнного?
Дуже жалкую, що ми не можемо зараз під час війни дозволити, щоб багато міністрів їздило на один той самий захід.
I'm very sorry that during the war we cannot afford as a state to send a few ministers from our government to answer all your questions.
Because it is a third questions of energy security and energy issues. So I don't know if you want the answer from my side. I will need to check the fresh information from my colleague.
Окей, останнє питання.
Ну, давай ще кілька.
Okay. Do we have more questions?
Thank you, Minister. This is Kojima Mei from NH Japanese Public Broadcaster. I appreciated this opportunity. Only last one question. I would like to ask you again that like some countries cannot still rely on some fuel from Russia. So what is the message to the international community at this opportunity of COP27 of your side?
Фактично повторне питання, що деякі країни все одно використовувати російське викопне паливо. Який ваш меседж до цих країн на КОП-27?
Меседжі стосовно країн, стосовно палива, вони в першу чергу звучали від президента Володимира Зеленського.
So firstly, I want to attract your attention that the messages about fossil fuels and messages to other countries were spoken by our President Volodymyr Zelensky in his statement.
Тому мої меседжі можуть бути тільки такими самими, як у президента.
So my messages can be only the same as our president already mentioned.
І меседж один, що не можна фінансувати смерті на Україні, а фактично така співпраця, вона фактично фінансує сьогодні війну і фактично фінансує смерть.
So I have only one message. You cannot finance war and death in Ukraine. And this cooperation with Russia on fossil fuels is financing war and death in Ukraine.
Багато країн, особливо країни Європейського Союзу, вже прийняли незручні рішення для себе.
Many countries, especially within the European Union, have already adopted some very uneasy decisions for them.
І це ще раз підкреслює те, що це ще раз підкреслює підтримку України. Це дійсно меседж того, що ці країни разом з Україною підтримують і будуть поряд до нашої перемоги.
And these decisions made by some European countries is another evidence of their support to Ukraine. This decision highlight that their support of Ukraine will be continued till our victory. So if we have no further questions, we have one more question.
A very short one. Michael Bauchmüller, Süddeutsche Zeitung, Germany. I wonder if you accidentally meet your Russian counterpart over here at the conference, what would you do?
Якщо ви випадково зустрінете тут росіян на конференції, що ви зробите?
Дуже важке питання, я не планую з ними зустрічатися.
Випадково.
Тому треба подумати. Я думаю, що ми, дуже важко сказати, але в переговори ми вступати не будемо точно.
So we don't plan to meet Russians, but if accidentally we meet them, we won't negotiate at all. So I think it concludes our press conference. Thank you very much to the minister. And just as a follow-up to all of journalists who have registered for our press conference online, we will send as a follow-up the presentation of the minister. And if you haven't registered, please come to me and we exchange, and I will send